So, you know how, like, every YouTube game reviewer has a villain arc where they bash a good game for no other reason other than just because they did not like it? Whether it's G-Man or Synthetic Man or the Act Man? Well, today, this is such an arc, but for me. I have played Halo 1 3 times now, but the first 2 times being the original game and the third time being from the MC collection. And I only finished it now. And boy, let me tell you, was not worth it. Look, let's just be honest here. I hate this game, and I don't plan to play fair here. I mean, isn't there a phrase like the higher they are, the harder they fall? The main reason I tried this game was because of how legendary this game and its series are described as. I wanted to see the hype for myself, and I was expecting so much. Just so much more. But here we are, just disappointed. It's so disappointing that I would say this game makes Cyberpunk look not as bad. So yeah, now that you know how this review is gonna pan out and might not be as objective as you might have hoped, let's get started, shall we? It would not be polite of me if I start to bash the game right away without giving it a chance now, would it? So, let's talk about what the game did good and why is it praised to the degree that it is now. This game first showed its face on the Xbox back in 2001. This game rose to its rank because it was the only game to be the blueprint for what modern FPS games are. It was the first to implement the 2-weapon limit, a health bar that recovered automatically or cover-based action, most of which you see in games that fail to implement properly even nowadays. This game was the reason that we changed from Half-Life with quick saves, a ton of weapon variety, etc. to Fortnite, Battlefield, and all other modern FPS games. It was the first game to sell that blueprint, and for that time, I can't imagine this game being a great experience. The cover-based shooting with challenging AI that don't stand in one place? Oh, how the people could not have enough of it. I mean, there has to be some truth in people saying how fun it was to kill the Covenant with buddies in co-op back in the day, right? Back in the day. The key phrase of that sentence being back in the day. It's usually a good indicator that the statement is being stated in rose-tinted nostalgic glasses. Not the best sign when you have a reputation to live up to. So, let's remove those glasses, come back to 2021, and see how it fares. This game tells the story that is set in the future. A future where humanity has advanced well into space travel and colonization. The game opens with a panning shot of the Pillar of Autumn, a humanity-front spaceship led by Captain Keyes. Captain Keyes and his crew seem to have come across a curious little space structure in the middle of nowhere, which resembles the structure of a ring. While trying to explore his little discovery, they get ambushed by an alien race known as the Covenant. As goes any story of this kind, things don't go too well for Captain Keyes, and him and his crew are forced to release a superhuman known as a Spartan. This Spartan in particular was known by the name of Master Chief, which is who the player accompanies throughout the story. But it was too late even for Master Chief to stop that Captain Keyes issued an all-board evacuation. But before evacuation, Master Chief was entrusted by Captain Keyes with Cortana, the ship's onboard AI. Together with Cortana, Master Chief along with a couple of his crewmates managed to find an evac capsule and to safely disengage from the infiltrated ship. Now, this is where my first gripe comes in. As far as a sci-fi story goes, this seems bog standard. Pretty good, but nothing amazing. But what pisses me off is people saying this story is like the second coming of Jesus Christ from a technical standpoint. No, it isn't that grandeur. Sure, it's nice, but not better than everything else out there. For example, take the character introduction. Captain Keys is introduced in just 3 minutes of screen time before I'm told to go rescue him on a mission that takes about 2 hours. Why should I care about this man to such an extent when I don't even know who he is, why he does what he does, and how he is as a person? Look, I'm not saying you always need a lot of time to do character intro. In fact, so many great medias have shown that it can be done in a short time, which will still hook you into the characters and why you should care about them. But Halo 1 goes about it in a nonchalant way of, oh yeah, here is a captain who looks and seems like a good guy. Now put 2 hours into saving it. Of course, I do know that Halo 1 was aiming to be simple, compact, and minimalistic. The whole point is so to keep the experience short and concise. But that doesn't give it an energy shield from criticism for choosing that way of going about things. When you choose a method of delivery of an element, you should consider all the pros and cons of that method. So for me at least, I just could not give two shits about anything happening in the story. Not the Covenant, not the Marines, and certainly not the story. So my second gripe. This is the obvious one. The f***ing level designs, man! What the hell are these? I'm talking about the interior levels here. While the exterior levels were overall okay, the interior is the most frustrating shit out of them. This game was released in a time crunch back in 2001, and it shows. Half of the missions in the game are the same level as the first half, but now you're just going back. So that's like what, half of the new stuff gone already. Not only that, then it gets even worse when Bungie decides to reuse sections of the levels. Like, look at this. Yeah, those are all the same bridges, reused 3 times. And this is one of the best levels in the game too. It's just not this. They have these instances where you navigate the same room multiple times. And most of the time, they don't vary at all from each other. So what ends up happening is, it becomes very frustrating to navigate these areas. The first time I played this game, these levels were so frustrating because I could not mark each room from each other and ended up getting lost. It is some of the worst gameplay that I had to go through so far in a video game that the whole game goes straight down the toilet instantly for me. I mean, if you want further proof, let's just take a look at why each rooms are designed in a base. Let me ask you, why do you think this room is made in this base? Or this room? Or how about this room? Oh wait, that's right, this game only has like 3 rooms that is repeated over and over again, my bad. But what I'm trying to show you is that the developers put no thought to any of the more background sections of the levels here for a story-centric game. Just look at Deus Ex back in 2000. Each room in each level had a purpose. They all seemed like they had a use, whether they were a bathroom, or a storage, or a bunker. Compared to that, do you think any of these rooms in these spaces provide any use for the overall structure? It just shows that they minimalized the game so bare that they strip complementary components that might otherwise have brought better engagement. Don't talk about memory restrictions back in the day because Deus Ex Invisible War had done this better in the same system. Speaking about Deus Ex Invisible War, in that game's review, I did criticize the game for having corridor-like levels. Well, guess what? This game is just that, but 10 times. It's just the same hallway after hallway. Look, I tried to love these levels here, but if your own mother can't love you, then why should I? The one thing the game excelled back then was in the enemy AI sector, and dare I argue, even now. They are very dynamic and very reactive to the player, requiring skill and precision to take them down. Each time you are knocked into death by one of them, you don't feel like it was bullshit. it feels like the mistake was from your part. But on the other hand, we have your ally AI, or aka the Marines. And these guys are not fun to hang out with at all. Like, they have to be the dumbest pieces of shits that I've seen around. I mean, look at this bullshit. When I try to ram a warthog into an enemy, they're really good at dodging it. But these guys on the other hand, nope. They just stand there even if it's the tank that's rolling onto them. And it's not my fault I crash into them. The warthog is not the best thing to control, as it is very floaty and steers out of control real quick. Now if you still think otherwise, check these guys out on how they do their stealth operations.
Marine support.
Get ready to move in to support us, Sergeant. The Master Chief is going to covertly take out as many of the Covenant as he can. Don't open fire until you hear the enemy return fire. Don't open fire until you hear...
Yeah, every time. They are the first ones to ruin my cover. I mean, not that stealth is very fine here or anything. It feels like it is added to just say there is stealth. But still, who in their right mind thought it would be awesome to give the control of cover to these dumbnuts? I mean, thank goodness that there are no 4 stealth sections, because that would have been the icing on the cake. Okay, let's step back a little now and take a look at the gameplay here. The gameplay here is one of the most innovative features of this game. This game was one of the first that employed tactical combat that focused on cover and dealing with your enemies as quick as possible rather than running and gunning all over the place. And if you take a look now, you can see this tactical style gunplay almost in all modern FPS titles in one way or another. But then after introducing a gameplay that is supposed to be methodical and tactical, they just decided to contradict that with enemy combat by letting the enemy swarm you with huge numbers. While the first couple of levels are fine and in some instances fun, the later levels, especially the levels after the flood has been introduced, just sees you getting swarmed by enemies. The gunplay systems that you're given here is minimalistic, with you only being able to hold on to 2 guns. The guns though are enemy specific, so if say the shotgun is effective against the flood, then the energy weapons are gonna be effective against the elites. If the assault rifle is gonna be effective against the little flood creatures that crawl around, then the pistol is gonna be effective against the grunts. You get the idea. So when you get swarmed by these guys in huge amounts, but only 2 guns to fight them, it's no fun. You also don't auto pick up the ammo. Like, you have to hold E to pick up guns if you run out of ammo for a gun. And it just ends up being tedious, especially with you being so under-equipped to deal with some of the more busy sections of the game. To be fair to the game though, I guess the pistol and the shotgun is ridiculous enough that they let you power through the enemies anyways. But still, it was tedious enough that I had to use a trainer to get through the last 2 levels. Yeah, when you have grenade spammers and a huge count of enemies in narrow corridors, using a trainer might be a good idea. The worst part of it all is that Halo's player movements are supposed to be fun and light. Like, you could cover a lot of distance with Master Chief's almighty jump. But then they decide to have you fight an army of shit ton of enemies in corridor, thereby also restricting your movements, which is also contradictory. Like, there are a lot of these design languages where the game is like, oh hey, here's a cool mechanic. Okay great, now we are gonna do whatever to make them unfun. Just the absolute worst, especially the enemy swarming thing. Now, if you bring up the argument that the enemy factions also fight each other and you can use that to your advantage, no, that did not work for me. As soon as these guys spot me, they drop their little fight against themselves and come after me. So yeah, even gameplay wise too, this game, while it being very innovative, suffers badly at the end of the day. So yeah, that's it for the Halo 1 review. I guess I came too much as a cynic and unfairly biased, but that's the whole point of this video. This game has so much people behind it that say this thing holds up more than most other games, even though 10 seconds later, they just go and contradict themselves, just like the game. Obviously, if you enjoy this game, then no offense to you. But this is more directed towards the hardcore people who say shit like Halo 1 is a masterpiece or Halo 1 is the golden standard in video games. No, it's not. These people just go out of their way to point out the flaws of the game, but then excuse it anyway and rate it a masterpiece. It's just frustrating. I get that it's subjective, but when so many people start calling it a masterpiece, it kinda starts getting into a legendary precedent that no other game has ever touched. And most of my hate for this comes from that. I was always told this was the next level shit or the game that will never be topped before I played the game. But when I played this, it was just one shitty garbage pile. When a game boasts such titles, it also has to stand against criticism that would be harsher than what some other games would have to. I mean, does it have the best gameplay? No. Does it have the best story? No. In fact, it was kinda generic for a sci-fi story. Does it have the best level designs? No. There's some of the worst and some mediocre at best by today's standards. I mean, to the game's credit, it was so renowned that other games that came after this borrowed a lot of elements from this game that, by now, the newer games got more time to really refine them and do it better than Halo 1. But still, COD was only like almost 2 years away. It feels more like Halo just raised all of them into what was eventually gonna be, rather than bring this whole new dinner to the table. I mean, it's not a secret that Halo 1 was rushed. That's why it's such a shitty mess right now. Look, I would be lying to myself if I did not admit that I certainly did have moments where I wanted to keep on going, but those sections were far fewer than the whole game. And all for what? A generic main protagonist saves the day ending. Like, who did not see that coming? I don't know. I wished at least something story-wise, but here too it was generally uninteresting. At least the first time I played and reached the Flood, I thought maybe that now the Flood has been released, which is a faction stronger than the Covenant and the humans. Maybe humans and Covenant could join alliances and it would be cool to see a dynamic. But instead of something interesting, it just goes on to say a story of a generic badass main character who saves the day after the shit hit the fan. I guess if I had to say anything good about the game, I mean, the soundtracks are awesome. Oh yeah, speaking about the good, people tend to give the Anniversary Edition too much shit, saying how vanilla is better and truer to Halo. Like, that means something. If anything, the Anniversary Edition makes improvements to play the game. For starters, it actually helps you navigate the interiors better because it's more detailed and hence you can remember things a bit more clearly. It also lights the interior better so that again, you can see more and identify your surroundings more. I don't know what the Halo feel is, I don't care what it is, and certainly do not think the Anniversary Edition being the first time experience to be any less than playing the original. The toggle switch is amazing, I hope we get them in more coming remasters, but yeah. Apart from some performance errors here and there, the Anniversary Edition is a very welcome version of the game. But that's gonna be it for me. Jesus, my final thoughts is longer than my actual review now. Alright, that's it, see ya.